Okay, kind of late in the day. We just got done doing the brakes on this one over here. We're almost done with that, which is not for me. It's for somebody else. A little trade action for the Lexus. And what do we have here? That is for me. We move fast, and apparently picked this Extracab EFI 4x4 up, and I'm gonna have to fix it a little bit, but it's all there. It runs. I towed it here, but it's leaking like a sieve, so we're just gonna pop out the trailer here. I don't think it's been sitting for all that long. I've been trying to put a lot of work into it, getting it going again, but to no avail. Now it's needing new, different stuff. And the guy just got tired of working on it, so now it's mine. Smoke's pretty bad. They said they did some upper end stuff, but why does it smoke so bad? Alright, here we are, Mantis Garage, and we've got a little bit of shop cleanup that's going on lately. Organizing, and now we're almost done with the trike project, but not quite. And we need to start working on this truck. So, 88 Toyota pickup. Smoke's real bad. I fixed the oil leak out of the front, but the engine still needs to come out, so I started undressing it a little bit here. And we're going to have to pull the motor out soon, possibly order some parts, but I've got a bunch of 22R stuff, so we're just going to swap stuff around and make a good tight block and seal up the transmission that's leaking and put this thing back together.
Falling down in a hole so lonely, afraid I'll never get out again. I'll keep digging down for me, but you will never see me again. Falling down in a hole so lonely, afraid I'll never get out again. I'll keep digging down for me, but you will never see me again.
Put a whole exhaust in this thing. You going to, or you did? No, somebody did.
I used to think that the light could blind me, but I won't believe in things I just can't see. I never wanted to tread so lightly, and all that's left is what you cannot hear. Falling down in a hole so lonely, afraid afraid I'll never get out again. I'll keep digging down before me, but you will never see me again. This is where I draw the line, and it's where you stay behind. I won't let you follow me, rest assured, 'cause now I see not to stay, not to reside. This hole is just a place to hide. This hole is just a place to hide.
Yeah. This hole is just cracked. It's scary. What's up? What's going on there? Okay, we figured out why it's leaking out of the crank, or out of the front of the transmission. See that crack? That ain't supposed to be there. Ooh. Well, I think I have another one of those, but why did it get cracked? Jeez. if anybody ever wonders what that rattling and what the problem with the Toyota cam chains is, here we have broken cam chain guide. There should be a L shape like this kind of that comes off of here. It's completely missing. And you can see there's wear here on the block where the chain had been rubbing for a while. This one on this side, it's plastic, bolts tight. This is kind of loose, which is stupid. And then the tensioner was bent bracket here. The chain got so loose, and it was loose for so long that it eventually broke and lost time and bent some valves. But the block is still good, so we'll go put the block in storage, and that's that motor out of the Mikey 84, as I call it, which I haven't really done a display of yet, but I put a 86 turbo motor and the 84 Extracab pickup. Okay, here we are, Mantis Garage, the red Toyota 88 truck. So now we are on to the fourth motor. So the first one being the original motor, second one being that one with the groove in the cylinder wall, third one being the one with the domed pistons that had the galls on the crank, and I'm not going to use that because there's too much that's different. So now here we have a fourth motor, which is actually more like the first two. It's got flat top pistons. This is a short deck. It's got the knock sensor bung on this side, and this hasn't been sitting that long, but the problem with this block is there's a crack in the side of the casting right here, and so it lets coolant out, so it won't hold coolant pressure. And it would be pretty hard to weld that really efficiently because it's cast and it's really porous and it's really contaminated because it's been leaking coolant for a while and it's rusty, and so we're not going to try and do that, but I am going to probably pull this motor down to just parts and see if the crank and everything is good. I might take these pistons and the crank and put them in with that setup over there. Okay, so after cylinder honing, you can see there's a lot of this action here, which is from the pistons rocking back and forth. And on number 3, there's a blown head gasket, and it probably sat with moisture on it for a while. And then there's a lot of vertical grooves from the pistons going up and down. And all in all, this is just not a good usable block, but if you don't have a cylinder hone, you can really investigate this, you know, without honing it, but honing it just makes all the imperfections stand out, and I'm definitely not going to want to use this block because the smoking is so bad when you get it apart. Just have to go with the other one, other options. nothing to write home about, but it cleaned up most boring imperfections except for that big deep groove in number 4. But it started to take out the corners. I'm not going to go deep enough to clean the whole thing up because it's just a honer, it's not a boring. But there's still a little bit of ring flop that's present on the cylinder wall, which you don't have to get out unless you're boring. But we're not going to bore it. Start putting it back together. Music here. Can't deal with it. As I was saying with my radio on, so you probably didn't hear me, you can make a tap out of any bolt by taking and just cut a real sharp groove down it and don't nick any of the other threads. And then when you run this bolt down into your bolt hole, it'll clean the threads up and it'll take any gunk out and deposit it in that groove. Okay, here we are, Mantis Garage, and after disassembling 4 motors for this 88 rebuild to assess what parts I have to go put back together, we're back to the original block, and I don't think I'm going to use much off of this original block except maybe the head or some valves out of the head depending on how the head looks. But I thought I'd show you guys, in case nobody's ever had a lower end apart to this point, some stuff to watch for. Really, don't be afraid to get a motor apart this far. If you have a stand, it's all nuts and bolts, and the most critical stuff is clearance and torque value. But in investigating the bearing caps to get the crank out, and I'm going to do a little honing on the cylinders to see if I can use this block, I looked at this bearing, and if you see here, a lot of discoloration. It's not into the brass yet, it's still in the babbitt, but we've got massive grooves here, and you can definitely see where the oil line was. And it's not wearing very well, and so if you look at the crank, they shouldn't have even used this crank, whoever put these bearings in there, because the crank is really grooved out. Now that may look okay to the naked eye, but every one of these lateral lines is a small groove. And those grooves equal more friction, heat, and poor oiling in this area. So you can't have your crank like all grooved out like this. It's got to be totally smooth, and you might get away with it for a while, but eventually it's going to eat into the bearings and it's not going to be good. So some of the rod bearings had the first signs of some discoloring, and it probably ran out of oil at one point, and then when they put oil back in it, it hadn't let go. But for my money, I'm not going to rebuild with these bearings or this crank. But you can take the crank and the bearings out and put a different crank in there with new bearings, and as long as the bore is good, then you should be fine. Alright. Okay, here we still are on this project, and the next move is brought to you by PBR, of course. You're wondering, what's he doing with the dog leash? Okay, well, I don't know if you knew this, but I live on an island very far from machine shops or parts supply chains or anything like that. So here I've got my crank that I want to use, and my bearing surfaces are all really good except for the one right in the middle, and then this one here has a little scuffing on it. So I'll show you just right in there. Not bad, but it was way worse. It was bluing and just a hair of an area on the center. But so I've got a piece of really fine sandpaper, and I've coated it with some Teflon to cut the friction down a little bit. And now I got my dog leash. It's going to drive the sandpaper, and I can sit down here and just pull back and forth on it like I was a little Indian trying to start a fire. Okay, so we've got sandpaper trying to clean up my bearing surface a little bit. I'm getting at the bearings, just cleaning off a little imperfections on the surface, but we've got better bearings. Put them on this bearing surface, replace just this single bearing because it was the worst off, and I don't want to torch the new bearing. We've got it all apart. We're just trying to fix it up a little bit, and I'm not trying to send it all the way off to the machine shop. I'm a cheap bastard, and this is just trying to get us by. So it's already starting to look way better. Never leave home without your dog leash. You never know when it might come in handy. Unless you don't have a dog. Then you might have to go and get a leash so you can do tricks like this. And you don't want to go too hard or too long because you don't want to make it oblong. But you're not going to take off very much with 2000 grit sandpaper. So now that I've got my little surface imperfections dialed down, just the highs, I'm not going to touch the lows. So there's still a little groove in it, but there's no high points, and there's no more bluing. That'll be a nice bearing. It won't wear the babbitt out. Now I'm not going to do that on all of them, but just the ones that are messed up. 26. Okay, so we're on a reassembly phase of this project and reusing stuff. One of the biggest factors you got to think of is wear on the part that you're putting back in there. If there's any wear, then try to find a better one. And then aside from that, it's dirt. You don't want to have any dirt on there because it'll just eat away everything internally before it gets lubricated. So wash away any dirt, check your parts for wear. I'm using different pistons in this case because there was so much piston slap in the last motor that there's no reason to use those pistons over. Not that we're using very much from the old motor, but I've got a little mini solvent tank full of gas here, and I'm taking my pistons one at a time and just dumping them in there. Leave it for a minute, and that just loosens up any grease and dirt, and then you can work the rings around in the ring grooves. And I don't recommend taking the rings out because you have more of a chance of hurting them when you take them out. But if you work them around in the ring grooves and they move around real nice, then that will mean they'll move freely in the motor, which means more compression. And then the other thing I like to say when you put things together like this is there's ring end gap here, right? And the ring end gap, I always stagger it because there's really no reason to have them all lined up. You lose compression through there. But if you stagger it, say top one in line with the wrist pin, because that's going to lock the motion to the other axis of rotation, so there'd be more of the end gap here, which would cause more wear. But if you line it up with the wrist pin, so let's do the first one here on that side, second one here, and I'll line this one up center on the wrist pin. Now you've got your oil retention rings at the bottom, and if I spin this around to the end, you've got the two ends here fairly close together. Now I'd stagger those too, and I'd have those maybe not necessarily right at the wrist pin, but somewhere in line with it, and then this one directly opposite. And if you do that, when you put these together, then you're going to build more compression. And the other thing is you can always take oil, whatever oil you're going to use for the motor when it's all together, and just apply it inside the rings like this and work it around before you put it in, and then take a little bit of oil and run it around the cylinder wall before you put it in. Get all these surfaces covered with oil, and that oil will stay on there for a good part, so that you won't have a dry startup when you turn the motor over the very first start. If this shit was all dry, then you would immediately start galling and wearing the surfaces that you just freshened up. So get things all nice and greasy and gooey, clean with no dirt on them, and you should have a nice tight motor, even if you're using used parts, as long as you use the best of all the options you have. You don't want to use burned up bearings on your crank because your crank spins everything. So start with the crank and work your way out. As I was talking about before with the rings, you can get the grooves lined up, end gap lined up properly, and everything's nice and clean. Get your hands clean. Make sure the surface is clean on the bearings and on the cylinder walls. Get your oil, work it into the ring grooves. It'll smoke a little bit when it gets all together, but it won't matter because it's going to be worth it. Okay, make sure the piston's lined up correctly, obviously. Drop her down the hole. get torque to 43 on 86 and later, and 46 on 85 and older.